welcome to how to create simple animations in After Effects. So we're going to do some cool stuff, motion blur, masks, all that sort of stuff. So you can do a new composition here and choose your width and height, and there we go. Now what you want to do is do a new, and we're going to do a solid layer. And this is a good way you can make actually like a bunch of masks. So each solid layer, you can choose the color of it, obviously. You can have as many masks as you want in it. So this is a good way. You would have obviously layers underneath and stuff like that. So how do you want to make the mask? Well, you have two choices basically. You can choose the shape tool, so you've got a bunch of these different shapes, or you can choose the pen tool. I'm going to use the shape tool and I'm going to use the pen tool for some different stuff, but you can use both. So let's try a star. So we double click the star, you'll see it just creates that star as is. I'm not going to probably do that though. I'm just going to draw the thing, and as I hold it down, you can basically press you can press up and down to change the amount of sides, and then you've got also left and right. It's going to change the curves on the outside and the inside. I'm going to just do, you can use page up, so you can do a bunch of different stuff. I don't want to go that far. There is a point where it goes a little bit too far, but funnily enough, if you go all the way down, you can make it also look kind of cool. So yeah, let's do like a, I guess, unusual shape, maybe that. Isn't that like an asterisk? Maybe. All right, so once you've got your shape anyway, that is basically the mask path. So you could say, yeah, there's my mask path. And what you could do is you could then like extend it or change the shape. There's different ways that you could extend or change the shape. So let's think about how you might want to do that. Probably with a selection tool. So for instance, I could draw a marquee box just around a few points here. And all you have to do is find a box, which is one of the shapes. Say, well, we want it to change, say, in this a couple of seconds here. And we're going to make it go all the way out here. Okay. And then it's done. So it will animate all the way out. And that's super jerky. So the way to fix that is you go into the graph editor. And when you look at the mask path, you'll see it just goes boom, like that. Normally what you want it to do is do what's called an easy ease. So you want it to go much faster at the beginning and then slower at the end. So you click on the second one, and then you can press, I think this is easy ease, or you can just press F9. But you see that's what it does. It goes fast at the beginning and then slow at the end. So look. The other thing you might want to do with it, you might want to put motion blur on it. So how do you do that? Well, this button is motion blur. It turns all layers on motion blur. But it's not on now, and that's because each layer's got its own individual motion blur setting. So there is the motion blur, it's now on. And you can already see the difference, right? It takes a little bit of a while to render, especially because I'm doing it on full, but it's going to give you a really cool motion blur effect now. And there's actually ways, but what if I wanted to have, say I had like a bunch of masks here, but I said, you know what, I want motion blur on all the masks, but not this one. And because you see this mask, it doesn't have its own motion blur button like the layer does. So the way to change that is if you go to layer, and you go to the mask here, you see there's a button, there's a thing here that says motion blur. It says same as layer. So if I change that to off now, you can already see what happened. It went off immediately. So even though it's on for the layer, this particular mask, I don't want it on. So that's one way to do that. Okay, so here we have another very simple mask. I literally just drawn a box, and you can see I've got a keyframe here. If you notice here, like the top right corner here is bigger, and that means that's called the first vertex. So here's a very simple animation you can make, like probably the simplest one there is. We're going to click here, and we're going to click on this here, and then we're going to click down here. And now what I've done, you see you can actually just change. This is you're changing the first vertex. So you're changing it, but you're not setting it, right? So we want to set it. So we're going to go to layer, mask and shape, set first vertex. And see it's created a keyframe. So even though I haven't moved anything, what I've basically done is I've changed the first vertex. So this point basically now becomes this point. So what it means is it's automatically going to have created an animation. So you can see it's had to do that, right? Okay, going back to the beginning again, let's try something a bit different. So how could we, for instance, add some vertex points? So with a mask, you don't actually want to lose any points. So in this whole mask animation, 4 is going to be the minimum. We want to keep these 4 points, because if we start deleting them, later in the animation, we're actually going to lose them through the whole lot, even at the beginning. So you don't want to do that. So if we click the pen tool now, what I could do, for instance, is I could say, you know what, I want one here as well. And then we could say we could just drag that out. So that way, you don't really lose anything, right? You know, I could say, you know what, I want another one. I want it to be there. And I'm going to drag that out. So that is sort of like the way you could start building the animation, just by adding more and more vertex points. But you can't subtract. It always has to be additive. So another way to look at this box, we could say this is the end of the animation, right? So this is where it ends. And what we could do is if you press Control and T on this, so you get like the free transform box. And this will like help it to get to like a state before. So maybe like a state is over here or something at this point, and then like here, at this point, it's going to be even further back. So you could say, well, it's going to be a bit like this, right? So go boom, and then boom. Another kind of interesting thing you might want to do here is you can see we've got like two actions occurring. You might want to start messing with the opacity. So for instance, we could you could say, you know what, I want the mask opacity here to be 0. And then here to be 100. What we could do, you could also offset it slightly. So you could put the 100 here. So then it sort of like makes it seem like, so it hasn't quite finished its task, right? So you could, for instance, you could bring that in a bit, push this one out a bit. And I think that's the sort of thing that you tend to want to do. So we can move it all in a bit. Maybe something like that. And if you had another mask, you could offset it as well in a similar way, right?